All right, Coach Lee here, who is fired up this morning. This guy, we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite subjects, pacing, in particular, negative splits. I did a video a few weeks ago about the sort of 4 basic strategies for training and racing in terms of pacing. And one of those concepts, negative splits, is actually my favorite. It's what I train with the most. And then I really try to find those races where I can use negative split pacing. So what is negative splits and why are they important in both training and racing? So let's jump in. Negative splits is a concept really familiar to runners. It's long been a part of running. And basically what negative splits means is say you have a mile, right? And you have 4 laps to go, right? So the concept of negative splits is, well, you start your first lap the slowest, 80 seconds. Your second lap, the faster, 75 seconds. Your third lap, 70 seconds. And your last lap, 65 seconds. So that often, and we have the data, that often produces the best times. Another way to do this would be just to run each of these laps at 75 seconds. Another way to do this would be to go out 65 seconds your first lap, your second 70, and try to hold on and to see what you can do for 75 and 80, right? Positive pacing. We know that from the data that the world's best times are when the second half of the race is, especially in running, is faster than the first half of the race. Strava did a great data dive back in 2015 where they looked at the world's fastest marathon times, and they found that the fastest marathon times were run by those guys and gals who started slower and ended stronger, right? So basically, what is negative pacing? Slow start, fast finish. Now, I've been doing cycling for a long time, and that is just not how people race or go on group rides or pretty much do anything in the cycling world, right? What do people do? They go out too hard. They just jam it, and kind of die 1,000 deaths to get home, and they just end up at the finish line completely knackered. So let's look at some stuff, right? The ability to run or ride negative splits teaches you how to manage your energy and pace yourself throughout a race or training ride. And that is key to all of this. Teaching your body to use energy in a progressive manner through time so that you're able to end strong, right? So you're flipping it. So instead of starting strong, ending weak, we want to start weak and end strong. That's the concept of negative pacing. Negative splits. Oh, yeah. And then in Hollywood, the best scene, there's a great scene. This is one of my favorite movies, Without Limits, the story of Prefontaine. It was actually produced by Tom Cruise. This is a fantastic fictionalized version of the life of Prefontaine. So Prefontaine was one of those runners. He was famous in high school for employing negative splits in his training and his racing. But in the movie, there's this great scene where Bill Bowerman sits down with Steve Prefontaine, a race that Steve Prefontaine had just won. And it's a great scene where Bill Bowerman shows him through negative splits. He actually could have came in 6 seconds faster than his winning time. But his need in the movie to go out strong cost him seconds because he goes out too strong and he doesn't have that kick at the end. Great movie. Watch that movie. Gets me fired up just thinking about it. All right, so let's go through and talk about, what is negative splits? How do you do negative splits on the bike? And so the most important thing that you're going to need is, a Garmin head unit. This is your baby, and these are the screens in the way that I suggest to use your screens because you're going to be using this lap button. I can't tell you how important this lap button is to training and racing, but as I personally know, I've been part of camps, led numerous cycling camps, and we have all these athletes and clients that show up and they'll do 10,000, 15,000 miles a year, and didn't even know how to use the lap button or really what's it for. But the lap button, once you learn the concepts of pacing, is one of your most dear tools to training and racing. So let's look in here. So this is what my lap screen looks like. I have the lap time up top. I have my 3-second power. I train by power. I have my second heart rate. So this is not my lap average heart rate. This is not my lap average cadence. This is actually my heart rate in real time, my cadence in real time. And then this is my average lap power. So I give my clients workouts that look just like this, 2x20. And then I ask them to do two things. I ask them to progress. So say for instance, if they have this is 250 and this is 260, or if they want to do, these are tempos. So say their tempo is 250. I ask them to do this at 250 and then this at 260. But I also ask them to progress through time. So basically through these intervals, they want to hit 250 average watts. They're starting down here, like say at 245 and ending at 260. And let's walk through that process. So let's go through me. My tempo zone is 250 to 290. I did these a couple weeks ago and I started off pretty conservatively for my first round. We're starting the base period. So I just started really conservatively. No need to jam it at this time. Just establish baselines. So for this goal, I chose 250 watts. All right, so I do my warm-up, lap time, 25 minutes, okay? My average, I know that a good warm-up for me, at the end of 25 minutes, I'm going to be at about 200 watts. I know my heart rate's going to be in the 130s, low 140s, and I like to do some high spin-ups for my cadence, things like this. All right, so what do? All right, I want to start my first 2x20 interval. What do? I hit the lap button. That's most important, okay? So the lap button's right there. Boom, hit that lap button, and then let's begin, okay? So at 30 seconds, right, my goal for this whole thing is 250 watts. So here we are at 30 seconds. I want to do a negative split, which means I'm starting off easier and I'm going to end the whole thing harder. I'm at 245 watts. My lap power is 245. And then I slowly want to bring that up. So at 3 minutes, I'm still at 245. At 10 minutes, right, I want to bring this up to 250. So now I have to ride at 255 to slowly tick that 245 average lap power up to 250. And then we get to 1930, and then I might need to go a little bit harder, even at 260 watts to grab me the 250 average watts that I wanted. What I love to do is when I work with clients and even my own data, I love to see the interval trend line. So say, for instance, they're going out and doing, a century, and we talk about this, that, I want them to start that century ride easier but end harder, or their intervals like these 2x20s. I love to look at their interval trend line. And this line just looks at that interval, and this is the exact trend line from me a couple weeks ago. So right here, you can see this is the interval trend line. So this is my power data. I started down here in the 240s. I ended in the 260s, and that gave me an average watts of 250. Now, what was great is just this morning, I was putting this all together, and then just this morning, an athlete for the very first time did his a negative split on an interval. How did he do? Boom, he nailed it. It was pretty cool to watch this. So yeah, he absolutely nailed it. Probably ended just a little bit too strong. And so we'll work with that on him in time, and that we really, we just want to slowly uptick those watts. Now, how do you do this? Okay, so one of the biggest problems that athletes have in doing negative pacing or negative splits for pacing is that they have their Garmin unit, but they want to run a Garmin workout, right? And so here's a great example. So here's the 2x20 workout that I just showed. And on the Garmin workout, you can just load this up, hit ride, and then it'll tell you, you keep that little arrow in the green, and then you're good. All right. So I just don't recommend this at all. This does not teach you how to use your unit to either train or to race. You know, if you want to do negative splits, you cannot have a Garmin workout up here. I had a client that was so bad with this and that was so addicted to this. His goal is literally, he wanted to do a race, one of those Grand Fondo races where they have the segments, you know, like the 20-minute segment here. And he wanted to set up a workout that would give him his targets. And so that at the beginning of the Grand Fondo race, all he would have to do is to hit start on this Grand Fondo workout. And then when he got to the start of the segment, the Garmin would show him exactly where to be with that green line. And so to me, this is an absolute disaster, in that you gotta learn how to think in numbers and to use that head unit to help you become an awesome athlete in training and an awesome athlete in racing. In racing. So here's an example. So I say don't do this at all. And then even in Zwift, right? So a lot of these were done in Zwift. So my athlete this morning who just uploaded his data, that was actually in Zwift. So in Zwift, how do I ride Zwift? Zwift doesn't give you average watts, right? Zwift just tells you what watts you're at and if you're going too high or going too low, but you don't have that average watts, right? What if you're going too low? What if you're going too high? You have to learn how to slowly adjust your average watts, especially if you're doing a longer race or a 20-minute or a 25-minute, 30-minute interval. You have to learn to slowly adjust that average watts to nail your goals. So even on Zwift, right? So how do I run Zwift? So I got Zwift up here. I have my head unit on my bike. I'm still using the lap button for my intervals on Zwift. So when I get to that point, Zwift says go, boom, I hit my lap button and I look at my lap button to make sure that I can hit my negative splits in pacing. All right, so what do I recommend? I recommend when doing negative splits, and I recommend not to use the Garmin workout at all. Put it in your head. Write it down, tape it to your stem. Just don't use that Garmin workout at all, and really learn to use the head unit in the way that it was supposed to be used for training and for racing. And so that's why right there, this is my screen. This is the thing that I look at the most. If I go out for a century race, I don't care about distance. I don't care about that stuff. All I need is time. And I can rock it out. But this is the screen that I look at 99% of my time. All right, hey, would love to talk to you about pacing. Would love to talk to you about negative splits. Lee at pro13.com. Lee at pro13.com.